Alright, YouTube, some of you that remember the period of 9/11 and 2003 when we invaded Iraq might see some eerie similarities between what happened then and what's happening now in Syria. Of course, Obama is saying that we're going to completely ignore the UN Security Council, we're going to completely ignore the rest of the world, and we're going to attack ISIS now in Syria. The problem being Obama is also telling the Syrians, specifically Assad and his forces, don't fire on our planes or it's an act of war. Now, those of us who remember a few months ago, when Obama wanted to take us to war with Assad and say, oh, well, we're going to use some surgical strikes and some airstrikes on Assad's forces to weaken him and get him out of power quicker, realize that the real reason that he's going to strike in Syrian airspace is specifically he wants to goad Assad into attacking so he can get his war. That's really what this is about. He wants to get Assad out of there because Assad is seen as pro-Russian. He's seen as not part of the Western sphere, and so naturally he has to be removed even if it results in Islamofascism spreading, which is exactly what's happened now in Iraq, and ISIS is simply an offshoot of this sort of theocratic nationalistic sentiment that you see all over the Mesopotamian region because these borders are artificial. People are trying to carve out actual sort of ethnic or theological identities. Some of them sustain themselves, some of them fall apart. ISIS is showing signs of strain already. And the fear-mongering that the media and the government right now are spreading sounds a lot like what we heard around 9/11. To tell the truth. I know that people don't want to admit that Obama and Bush are similar in most of their beliefs, but they really are. And you look at what Obama's doing, it's straight out of the Bush playbook. And the funny thing is, candidate Obama criticized Bush. He didn't build a large enough coalition. Well, the coalition under Bush, ironically, was far larger than the one that Obama tenuously holds right now for these strikes. Well, he acted in defiance of the international community. Well, so is Obama now. He took us to war in a nation under dubious circumstances that had little to nothing to do with 9/11. Well, Syria doesn't have anything to do with ISIS when you really think about it. Assad's forces are really the ones that are likely to be targeted by airstrikes, either deliberately, if Obama truly is a corrupt idiot, or accidentally, which might be what he's banking on anyway. All it takes is one wrong shot, basically, and all of a sudden Assad's anti-aircraft systems open up on an F-16, and then Obama gets to declare war. Well, it's a horrible day. This horrible butcherous dictator that gasses his own people just fired on one of our craft. We must destroy him immediately, and then there'll be boots on the ground. Don't you people understand this? That this is actually why he wants to go in there in the first place. He wants to perturb Assad into attacking. Now, the international community is saying you can't do this. Because, look, you can't simply violate Syria's airspace by unilaterally declaring Assad a horrible dictator butcher when the international community itself has already looked at the chemical weapons deployment and stuff. The stockpiles are mostly destroyed by now, by the way, anyway. But looking at the chemical weapons deployment that did apparently happen some time ago, there was question as to whether it was Assad or the rebels that deployed it, or whether it wasn't a mistaken deployment, essentially that bombs hit a depot that was storing chemical weapons, thus this vapor, nerve gas, chlorine, whatever, mustard gas, whatever it may have been, then got out. Since there was question, there was no real legitimacy to the United States claim, specifically Obama and Kerry, that he was doing this. Now, I think that our own generals, the military, a lot of politicians even, are dead set against this move. But right now they're being muzzled by Obama and Kerry under the sort of bandwagon approach of, ironically, if you're not with us, you're against us. Essentially that they're going to come out and attack anybody that dares to defy this. And you've seen Hillary positioning herself, by the way, by being notably mum on the subject other than to say ISIS is a threat. Well, ISIS really isn't a threat to the Western world. They don't really have the capabilities. They're an upstart group. They're really more theologically minded, as opposed to Al-Qaeda, which has always dedicated itself to striking things around the world. ISIS really hasn't done that. They operate more like the Taliban itself, more as a militant theological group than an expansionist or imperialistic sort of theocratic group that wants to spread elsewhere. Al Qaeda was interested in intimidating other countries for political and monetary gain. The Taliban was predominantly, and it's also connected with bin Laden, interested in holding the territory they had, grinding people down, and growing their opium. Well, that's really what ISIS appears to be. ISIS appears to be a group, for all of this nonsense about them having some harebrained plan about taking everything from central Spain all the way over to India, which would never work, by the way. Beyond that sort of harebrained nonsense that I think even they understand is pie in the sky and just propaganda, and let's face it, that's what it is, it's meant to scare people. ISIS really doesn't have the capability, unless we allow them to attack something, to do so. And I'm not going to get into 9/11 truth, but just look at it this way. Right now, our southern border is essentially wide open. And there are apparently plans by some of these people to infiltrate the United States and attack things. If something does happen, if they do attack a church, or bomb a skyscraper, or do anything else, or attack a military base, it'll be because our own politicians allowed it to happen just to give more reason to go to war. Obama is a warmonger. He wants war with Syria. He even expressed this view many months ago. He and Kerry, both against the Iraq war, both wanted to strike Syria. The problem being, once you strike another sovereign nation, however butcherous you may consider them, you have committed an act of war. Flying these planes over Syrian airspace and bombing installations that ISIS supposedly is manning is an act of war on the state of Syria as well, because permission was not granted to use that airspace. And Assad himself, butcherous and insane and horrific as the Western media may portray him, openly stated over a month ago that he wanted to partner with the United States in destroying these groups. The United States said no, but by the way, we're still going to bomb them in your airspace. We're just not going to give you advanced warning, and we're not going to allow you to fire back. Despite the fact that with your relatively primitive systems, you may not really be able to tell whether it's one of our fighters or one of the ones that ISIS stole. That's the point. He wants retaliation on part of Assad so he can have a reason to go to war with Syria, and people aren't seeing this. This is straight out of the Bush handbook. It's not a false flag so much as it's a really screwy military strategy. I can't imagine that many people in the military support this move. I can't imagine that they're dumb enough to do that. I have to imagine that they're essentially gritting their teeth and shaking their heads right now at how dumb Obama is. But still, there are these weird Democrats. I can remember back in 2006, 2007, when 500,000 people descended on Washington, D.C. I don't see any marches for peace, any marches against war right now. Could it be because the president is a black Democrat instead of a white Republican? Probably. These people are delusional if they don't see the similarity between what we are doing now, ignoring the international community, taking civilian lives, which will most definitely happen, attacking Assad, essentially declaring war on him already, although war has only been declared on ISIS. And here's the real screwy part. Obama has painted himself into such a corner that it's no longer really possible for him to denote exactly what he's going to do. He's already said no boots on the ground, but guess what? Without the countries around Syria allowing us to use air bases, how exactly are we going to maintenance aircraft? Are we going to continuously fly them off a single aircraft carrier over and over for months to attack ISIS? I don't think so. We're going to need somewhere to hunker down. Where do you think that will be? It will be in Iraq. We'll use one of the bases that are in Iraq, and we'll have to have several thousand boots on the ground to do it, because you need technicians for the planes, you need a supply line, which means you need to move goods in by air, by sea, whatever. You need guards there because ISIS is already in Iraq as well. You will have more troop deployments over there, and before you know it, there will be thousands of American troops there. And that's exactly what Obama wants, because Obama's shrewd. He was denied his war before because he asked. He said, well, I don't need congressional permission, but I'll ask it anyway. I want to go strike Assad's forces because he's horrible and butcherous and gassed his own people, which apparently never actually happened, most likely. And the people told him no. The American people overwhelmingly disapproved of such an idea. Congress didn't approve of it. The international community didn't like it. Even the military didn't like it. It was essentially Obama and Kerry unilaterally deciding that's what they wanted to do. But they realized it was heavily unpopular and backed off. Until now. Now they've got a new excuse to go into Syria. Oh, ISIS is there. Before it was the FSA. Well, we want to topple Assad. The FSA are kind of on our side. We're funding them. But now ISIS is there. And they're fighting alongside the FSA, which most people don't even realize because the media didn't really report on it. Now we're going to go into Syria. And we're going to attack Assad. And there will be war. Though, let's face it, when you're running bombing missions over a country, that's war, folks. Even if there's not a single soldier on the ground, that's war. We're at war with ISIS, we're at war with Syria, we're technically in a war in Iraq again. Obama has led you into war, and he's done it in such a way that there are still people who support him despite the fact that when Bush was president, they hated the idea of war, and they marched on the White House. Obama has taken you to war. He has lied to you straight to your face, and candidate Obama and President Obama are almost diametrically opposed. The views expressed that got him elected in the first place are almost the exact opposite of his acts since he has gotten into the presidency. And there are still people that do not understand this, which is, these people, I mean, come on. Do you not see the similarity between what Obama did, what Obama's doing and what Bush did? They're so similar that it's almost like I half expect Obama to suddenly peel his face off and there's Bush peering out from behind it and he's like, yeah, I got in for a third and fourth term. All I had to do was put lifts in my shoes and get a tan. That's about the size of it. It's a sad situation. People have been duped by their fear of ISIS, thinking that they're actually going to be able to attack the Western world unless they're allowed across the border, practically. Look at the dude who dressed as Osama bin Laden and walked across the border and nobody stopped him. Or the dude who dressed up in a terrorist outfit with a bag full of fake Ebola and crossed over from Canada across the Great Lakes. And you really think that we're going to be able to stop them from conducting a terrorist attack when we have that kind of lax security? You get better screening going to and from areas within the country just by using an airport than you get at the border now. I don't understand what the logic is. It's almost like they want us to be attacked. And I'm sure that there are people who believe that's the case, that they're waiting for an attack essentially to false flag them and then crack down further. But candidate Obama was against surveillance. President Obama's all for it. In fact, he wants to expand it further and further. Candidate Obama was really against the Patriot Act. Now all of a sudden, he's all for it. He was against gay marriage. Now he's tacitly for it because he knows it'll get him votes. Candidate Obama was pro-civil union, and before that, he didn't even like those. He was a straight-laced, sort of almost conservative Democrat when it came to social issues before. Candidate Obama was, smoking pot or crack or whatever, and now President Obama's really said nothing and kept the raids going until very recently. Candidate Obama was anti-war and disliked Bush's dishonesty. President Obama's all for war as long as he's the one in office. And people like Michael Moore and Jon Stewart, liberal sort of figureheads, point this out, and then the liberals themselves attack these people. They are so supportive of this messianic sort of figure of Obama that they're willing to attack even their own for criticizing him. It's absolute, utter fruitcake madness. These people don't see the similarity between what Bush did then and what Obama's doing now, and I think that speaks to the short attention span of the vast majority of the public. They get pacified by seeing the D after Obama's name. It's a confusing situation, but I'm telling you, as someone who is just old enough to remember 9/11 in fairly good detail, it feels a lot like that again. It feels very similar to the atmosphere in this country shortly after 9/11. The only difference now is that the sides have switched and that now it's a group of mindless Democrats sort of numbly chanting for war and talking about how afraid of this ragtag group of a few tens of thousands of terrorists are. Well, those terrorists are using American supplies that we dropped all over the Middle East. They're using American money. They're probably funneling oil into this country right now through other neighboring countries. Let's face it, they're probably playing middleman on the oil that they've got access to. And it wasn't until they reached the oil rigs that all of a sudden we were worried about ISIS, and the media went into overdrive telling you how afraid you should be. I'm not afraid of ISIS. I'm more afraid that our troops will end up over there again, will go further into debt, thousands more of our troops will die or get injured, and will be fighting ISIS and Assad at the same time. That's what I'm afraid of. But it looks like Obama has gotten the war with Syria that he so ardently wanted and so ardently argued for previously, several months ago. And Kerry, too. Again, John, I'm anti-war and speaking at a peace rally, Kerry all of a sudden is a war hawk. When that sort of thing happens, you know that these people lack moral character. That's about all. Peace out.